Demoted after my biggest success so my CEO could promote his golf buddy. But when the board called my name, his face said it all. Hit subscribe and like if you've ever been undervalued at work. More corporate justice stories coming soon. 3 years of dedication, countless late nights, and the most successful marketing campaign in Apex Technologies' history. And this was how it ended. I stared at the email from CEO Richard Keller, my stomach dropping with each word I read. Restructuring of the marketing department, lateral move to provide growth opportunities. Marcus Doyle will be assuming the role of marketing director effective immediately. I read it twice more, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves. They didn't. After leading our team to record-breaking quarters, I was being demoted so Richard could promote his golf buddy. Natalie, everything okay? Lisa poked her head into my office, concern etched across her face. Richard just demoted me, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Marcus is taking over as marketing director. Lisa's eyes widened. Marcus? But he's been here, what, 6 months? And wasn't his last campaign the one that barely met projections? I nodded, closing my laptop. Apparently, I'm being moved to special projects within the department, whatever that means. That's complete BS, Lisa said, stepping fully into my office and closing the door. Everyone knows you're the reason we landed the Next Gen account. That campaign alone increased our market share by 15%. I appreciated Lisa's outrage, but the reality was settling in. I had been passed over, pushed aside, and replaced by someone with half my experience and a fraction of my success record. All because Marcus was Richard's friend from the country club. I'm going to talk to him, I said, standing up. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a determined anger. This isn't just unfair, it's bad business. Walking through the open office floor, I felt eyes on me. News traveled fast at Apex. By the tight smiles and sympathetic glances, it was clear the announcement had already circulated. I kept my chin up and my pace steady as I made my way to Richard's corner office. His assistant, Denise, gave me an apologetic look. He's on a call, Natalie. I'll wait, I replied, taking a seat in one of the plush chairs opposite her desk. After 20 minutes of watching Denise awkwardly shuffle papers, Richard's door opened. He looked momentarily startled to see me, then quickly composed himself. Natalie, I was going to schedule time with you tomorrow to discuss the transition, he said, gesturing for me to enter his office. The space was immaculate and impersonal, all glass, chrome, and black leather. Not a single family photo or personal touch, just like Richard himself. I think we should discuss it now, I said, taking a seat across from his imposing desk. I'd like to understand why I'm being removed from a position where I've consistently exceeded expectations. Richard leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. This isn't a removal, Natalie. It's a strategic realignment. The board and I feel that your talents would be better utilized in developing new initiatives rather than day-to-day management. So my reward for building the most successful marketing team in company history is to be stripped of that team. I kept my voice level, professional. And Marcus, who has been here less than a year, is somehow better qualified? A flash of annoyance crossed Richard's face. Marcus brings fresh perspectives from his time at Weber Communications. He has connections we need for the upcoming fiscal year. Translation: Marcus knows people Richard wants to impress. I had suspected as much when Richard hired him at an inflated salary 6 months ago. I understand change can be difficult, Richard continued, his tone patronizing. But this is what's best for Apex. Your compensation package remains the same, and you'll still report directly to the executive team on your projects. I wanted to argue further, but I recognized the finality in his tone. This wasn't a discussion. It was a notification. When does this take effect? I asked. Marcus will address the team tomorrow morning. I'd appreciate it if you could help ensure a smooth transition. So not only was I being demoted, but I was expected to smile and make it easier for everyone. Typical. I stood up. I'll need time to process this change. I'll be taking the rest of the day off. Richard frowned but nodded. That's fine. We'll talk more tomorrow. As I packed up my things, my phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Emergency drinks at Cooper's, 6 p.m., non-negotiable. I smiled despite myself. At least I had allies in this fight. Cooper's was crowded with the after-work crowd when I arrived. Lisa waved from a corner booth where she sat with Raj from IT and Daniel from finance, two colleagues I'd worked closely with on cross-departmental projects. We ordered you a double, Daniel said, sliding a whiskey neat across the table. Figured you'd need it. You figured right, I replied, taking a grateful sip. The alcohol burned pleasantly down my throat. This is such crap, Raj said, shaking his head. Everyone knows Marcus is just Richard's yes man. The guy couldn't market water to someone dying of thirst. I appreciated their support, but venting wouldn't change anything. I need to figure out my next move. Either work within this new role or start looking elsewhere. You can't leave, Lisa protested. You're the heart of the marketing team. Without you, half our strategies would fall apart. That might be exactly what Richard wants, Daniel said thoughtfully. Create a position where Natalie can't succeed, wait for her to quit, and avoid any messy severance or potential discrimination claims. I hadn't considered that angle, but it made sense. Richard was nothing if not calculating. The quarterly board meeting is next month, Daniel continued. I'm preparing the financial presentations. Our numbers are good, really good. And most of that growth is directly attributable to your campaigns, Natalie. So what are you suggesting? I asked. Daniel leaned forward. Don't quit. Document everything, every success, every contribution. Be ready to present your case if the opportunity arises. The board members aren't idiots, Raj added. They care about results, not Richard's golf buddies. As we strategized over drinks, I felt something I hadn't since opening that email. Hope. This wasn't over yet. The next morning, I arrived early, determined to face the day with professionalism. The office was quiet, with just a few early risers hunched over their computers. I used the time to pack up personal items from my office, photos, awards, the small collection of marketing books I kept on my shelf. At 9:30, Richard called an all-hands meeting in the main conference room. I took a seat toward the back, ignoring the curious glances from colleagues. Good morning, everyone, Richard began, his voice carrying that practiced CEO cadence. I'm excited to announce some changes to our organizational structure. As we continue to grow, it's important that we position our best talent where they can make the greatest impact. I kept my expression neutral as he continued. Marcus Doyle will be taking over as marketing director, bringing his innovative approach to our core marketing functions. Marcus stood up, beaming. He was handsome in that generic way, tall, with carefully styled brown hair and an expensive suit. I'm thrilled for this opportunity, he said. I look forward to building on the strong foundation that's been established. Not once did he mention me by name or acknowledge that he was taking my position. Classy. Additionally, Richard continued, Natalie Pearson will be transitioning to a special projects role, focusing on strategic initiatives that require her particular expertise. A few confused looks were exchanged. Everyone knew this was a demotion disguised as a promotion. After the meeting, I retreated to my now former office to finish packing. I'd been reassigned to a smaller space near the creative team, away from the executive corridor where I'd previously been positioned. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Victoria Chen, our HR director and one of the few executives I genuinely respected. Do you have a moment? She asked, closing the door behind her. Of course, I replied, gesturing to the chair opposite my desk. Victoria sat down, her expression serious. This transition wasn't my recommendation, Natalie. I want you to know that. I appreciate you telling me that, I said. Though I'm not surprised. Richard presented it to the executive team as a done deal, she continued. Said you were more valuable as a creative strategist than a manager. I snorted. That's convenient, considering I've consistently received excellent management reviews. I know. Victoria leaned forward. Look, I can't officially advise you on this, but keep detailed records of everything. Your performance reviews, campaign results, team feedback, anything that documents your contributions and leadership capabilities. It was the same advice Daniel had given me, which only reinforced my resolve. The board isn't always aware of the day-to-day decisions, Victoria added carefully. Sometimes they need to be informed. After she left, I sat thinking about her words. Victoria wasn't just suggesting I document things, she was hinting that I might find allies on the board if I had the right evidence. Over the next 2 weeks, I adjusted to my new role, which was essentially busy work. I was tasked with researching emerging market trends and developing long-term strategy documents, all of which were either ignored or heavily modified by Marcus before being presented to clients. Meanwhile, I watched as Marcus dismantled much of what I'd built. He reassigned team members, shelved successful campaign strategies, and implemented a hierarchical approval process that bottlenecked creativity. The results were predictable. The next-gen account, our biggest client, expressed concerns about recent deliverables. 2 other clients requested calls to discuss changes in quality. Our internal metrics showed a decline in engagement across platforms. Through it all, I meticulously documented everything. Every decision Marcus made that contradicted best practices. Every metric that showed decline. Every client concern. I compiled performance data from before and after the transition, creating clear visual representations of the impact. I also cultivated relationships with key team members who were increasingly frustrated with Marcus's leadership. Not to undermine him, I was too professional for that, but to ensure that good work still got done despite the challenges. One evening, as I was preparing to leave, Lisa stopped by my new, smaller office. "The next-gen presentation is a disaster," she whispered, closing the door. "Marcus completely redesigned the campaign approach without consulting anyone who's actually worked with the client." "What's his new approach?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. "Generic lifestyle marketing, the exact opposite of the personalized, data-driven strategy they hired us for." Lisa looked desperate. "The presentation is tomorrow and it's going to tank. I've tried telling him, but he says I'm being resistant to innovation." I sighed. Next Gen was too important to lose over Marcus's ego. "Send me what you have. I'll review it tonight and we can meet early tomorrow to salvage what we can." That night, I stayed up until 2 a.m. restructuring the presentation, carefully preserving enough of Marcus's approach that he wouldn't reject it outright, while reincorporating the elements I knew Next Gen valued. The next morning, Lisa and I met at 7 a.m. to finalize the revisions. "This is so much better," she said, relief evident in her voice. "But will Marcus accept it?" "Frame it as enhancing his vision, not replacing it," I advised. "Stroke his ego a bit." Lisa grimaced but nodded. "For Next Gen, I'll stroke whatever needs stroking." The strategy worked. Marcus took the revised presentation, made a few superficial changes to stamp his ownership on it, and delivered it to Next Gen. They loved it, even extending their contract for another year. Richard sent a company-wide email congratulating Marcus on his innovative approach that secured the renewal. No mention of the team that actually saved the presentation, of course. I added the email to my growing file. A month into my new role, the cracks in Marcus's leadership were becoming increasingly visible. 3 team members had quit, citing management issues in their exit interviews. Client complaints had increased, and the marketing department's productivity metrics were down nearly 20%. Despite this, Richard remained steadfastly supportive of Marcus. They frequently left together for long lunches, returning with golf tans and inside jokes. Meanwhile, I continued working behind the scenes, helping team members navigate the chaos and maintaining relationships with key clients. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Eleanor Blackwell, a member of Apex's board of directors and former CMO of a Fortune 500 company. She was visiting the office the following day and wanted to meet with me to discuss marketing strategies for the upcoming quarter. This was unusual. Board members rarely engaged directly with non-executive employees. I immediately suspected Victoria might have had something to do with arranging this, but I wasn't about to question the opportunity. I spent that evening preparing a comprehensive overview of our marketing performance, before and after my demotion, along with strategic recommendations for improvement. If Eleanor wanted to talk marketing strategy, I'd give her the unvarnished truth. The next day, Eleanor met me in a small conference room away from the executive offices. She was an imposing figure, tall with silver-streaked black hair and the sharp gaze of someone who missed nothing. "Natalie, thank you for making time," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Of course, Ms. Blackwell, it's an honor." "Eleanor, please." She sat down, placing a tablet on the table. "I've been reviewing our marketing performance over the past 18 months. Quite a story in those numbers." I nodded cautiously. "It's been a period of significant change." "Indeed." Her eyes held mine. "A remarkable upward trajectory that recently shifted. I'm curious about your perspective on that shift." For a moment, I hesitated. Was this a trap? A test of loyalty? But Eleanor's direct gaze suggested she wanted honesty, not politics. "I prepared some materials that might address your question," I said, sharing my presentation with her tablet. For the next 45 minutes, I walked her through the data, explaining our previous strategies and the recent changes. I was careful to remain factual rather than accusatory, letting the numbers speak for themselves. Eleanor asked pointed questions throughout, probing my reasoning behind certain campaigns and questioning the rationale for recent strategic shifts. I answered each query thoroughly, drawing on my years of experience and intimate knowledge of our clients. As we concluded, Eleanor studied me thoughtfully. "You've provided a very clear picture, Natalie. I appreciate your candor and your obvious expertise." "Thank you for listening," I replied. "The board meeting is next week," she said, standing. "I hope you'll be prepared to share these insights if called upon." Her words sent a jolt through me. "I wasn't aware I'd be attending the board meeting." Eleanor smiled enigmatically. "Plans change. Be ready." After she left, I sat in stunned silence. Was the board considering reversing Richard's decision? It seemed unlikely, yet Eleanor's interest suggested something was happening behind the scenes. Later that day, as I was heading to a late lunch, I overheard Richard and Marcus in the break room. "The Q2 numbers are concerning," Richard was saying, his voice low but tense. "The board is asking questions about the marketing department's performance." "It's just a temporary adjustment period," Marcus replied confidently. "The team is still adapting to my methods. By Q3, we'll see significant improvements." "We need to show progress now," Richard insisted. "Eleanor Blackwell has been particularly vocal about the decline in client retention." "Eleanor is old school," Marcus dismissed. "She doesn't understand modern marketing dynamics." I quietly retreated before they noticed me, my mind racing. If the board was already questioning the marketing department's performance, Eleanor's meeting with me took on new significance. That afternoon, I received a calendar invitation from Richard's assistant. "Quarterly board meeting, marketing performance review, attendance required." The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Lisa caught up with me as I was leaving that evening. "You're going to the board meeting?" she asked, excitement in her voice. "That never happens for non-executives." "Apparently, Eleanor Blackwell requested my presence," I explained, still processing the implications myself. "Holy shit," Lisa breathed. "This is your chance, Nat. The board must be questioning Richard's decision. Or they want me to take some of the blame for the declining numbers," I countered, not wanting to get my hopes up. "No way. If that were the case, Richard would be keeping you as far from the board as possible." Lisa squeezed my arm. "This is good, Nat. Be ready to shine." Over the weekend, I refined my presentation, ensuring I had clear, compelling evidence of both my contributions and the recent missteps. I practiced my delivery, keeping it professional and solutions-focused rather than accusatory. By Tuesday morning, I was prepared but nervous. I wore my power suit, a charcoal gray ensemble that projected confidence without being flashy, and arrived early to set up in the boardroom. Richard appeared surprised to see me there. "Natalie, I don't think we need you for the full meeting. Perhaps you could come back for the marketing segment." "Actually," came Eleanor's voice from behind him, I specifically requested Natalie's presence for the entire meeting. Her insights will be valuable throughout our discussions. Richard's jaw tightened, but he nodded stiffly. Of course. As other board members and executives filed in, I took a seat at the far end of the table, feeling distinctly out of place among the company's leadership. Marcus arrived last, looking confident until he spotted me. His brow furrowed in confusion. The meeting began with standard updates, financial performance, operational metrics, strategic initiatives. I listened attentively, taking notes and observing the dynamics around the table. Richard dominated the conversation, while the board members asked occasional clarifying questions. Then came the marketing segment. Before we begin, Eleanor said, I'd like to address something that's been concerning several board members. Our marketing performance has declined significantly over the past quarter, following a period of exceptional growth. Richard shifted uncomfortably. As I mentioned in my report, we're in a transition period. Marcus has implemented several new strategies that require time to fully mature. And yet, another board member, James Peterson, interjected, we're seeing client concerns that go beyond normal transition issues. 3 major accounts have expressed dissatisfaction, and 1 is considering terminating their contract. Marcus leaned forward. I can assure the board that these are temporary setbacks. My approach at Weber Communications consistently delivered results, and it will here as well, once fully implemented. Eleanor's gaze remained skeptical. Results speak louder than assurances, Mr. Doyle. And currently, the results are concerning. She turned to me and I felt every eye in the room follow. Natalie, you led marketing before the recent reorganization. I'd like your assessment of the situation. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. Richard's face had gone pale, while Marcus looked like he might be sick. This was the moment I'd been preparing for, yet now that it had arrived, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Thank you, Eleanor, I began, my voice steady. With the board's permission, I've prepared a brief presentation that addresses your question. I didn't wait for Richard to object. Instead, I connected my tablet to the display system and brought up my carefully prepared slides. For context, I'd like to start with our performance over the past 2 years, I said, displaying a graph that showed a clear upward trajectory until a sharp decline 3 months ago, precisely when Marcus took over. Under my leadership, we increased client retention by 35% and new acquisition by 42%, resulting in revenue growth that exceeded projections by 28%. I moved through the presentation methodically, highlighting specific strategies that had driven our success and pinpointing where recent changes had undermined that momentum. I was careful to frame everything in terms of business impact rather than personal criticism. The data suggests that our recent decline isn't due to market conditions or competitive pressures, I concluded. It's the result of abandoning proven strategies that our clients valued in favor of more generic approaches that don't address their specific needs. I finished by outlining a recovery plan, a strategic roadmap that would restore our performance within 2 quarters without completely dismantling Marcus's changes, allowing him to save face while correcting course. When I finished, the room remained silent for a moment. Then James Peterson spoke up. This is the most comprehensive analysis I've seen of our marketing function in years, he said, looking impressed. Why aren't you still leading this department, Ms. Pearson? Before I could respond diplomatically, Eleanor answered for me. That's precisely what several of us have been wondering, James. Richard, perhaps you could explain the rationale behind reorganizing our most successful department. Richard cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. As I explained when we made the change, we wanted to leverage Natalie's creative talents in a more focused role, while bringing in Marcus's broader management experience. And how has that decision performed against objectives? Eleanor pressed. There have been adjustment challenges, Richard admitted reluctantly. It appears to be more than that, another board member commented. Based on Ms. Pearson's presentation and our own review of the numbers, this reorganization has negatively impacted our bottom line. The discussion continued, with board members asking me direct questions about specific clients and campaigns. I answered each query honestly and thoroughly, demonstrating my intimate knowledge of our business. Throughout the exchange, Marcus remained unusually quiet, while Richard grew increasingly agitated. When a board member suggested revisiting the organizational structure, Richard finally snapped. With all due respect, the executive team makes operational decisions, not the board, he said tersely. Marcus needs time to implement his vision properly. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. With all due respect, Richard, the board is responsible for ensuring this company remains profitable. When an operational decision threatens that profitability, it becomes our concern. She turned to the group. I propose we reinstate Natalie Pearson as marketing director, effective immediately, with expanded authority to implement her recovery plan. James nodded. I second that proposal. This is highly irregular, Richard protested. We can't make personnel decisions in a board meeting. Actually, we can, Eleanor countered coolly. The bylaws give us that authority when executive decisions jeopardize company performance. Shall we put it to a vote? Richard froze, his face a mask of disbelief. He hadn't expected the board to challenge him so directly, and certainly not over a mere departmental reorganization. All in favor of reinstating Natalie Pearson as marketing director with expanded authority? Eleanor asked. Hands went up around the table, all except Richard's and the CFO's, who was Richard's longtime ally. Motion carries, Eleanor announced. Natalie, congratulations. We look forward to seeing your recovery plan implemented. Richard sat stunned, while Marcus stared at the table, his career advancement crumbling before his eyes. The remainder of the meeting passed in a blur. As we adjourned, Eleanor approached me. Well handled, she said quietly. You presented the facts without making it personal. That's the mark of a true leader. Thank you for the opportunity, I replied sincerely. I didn't give you anything you hadn't earned, she said. Remember that. Now, I suspect you have a department to rebuild. As I gathered my things, Richard stopped me at the door, his expression a mixture of anger and resignation. This isn't over, Natalie, he said, keeping his voice low. The board might have overruled me today, but I'm still CEO. I met his gaze evenly. Yes, you are. And I respect your position, Richard. I've never wanted anything but success for Apex. That's why I fought for my role. I hope we can work together toward that goal. He didn't respond, merely turned and walked away. Back in the main office, word had already spread. Lisa practically tackled me with a hug when I returned to my small office. Is it true? She demanded. You're back as director? I nodded, still processing everything myself. Effective immediately, with expanded authority according to Eleanor. I knew it, Lisa crowed. The moment I heard you were going to the board meeting, I knew they'd see what we all see. Over the next few hours, team members stopped by to offer congratulations and support. Even those who had aligned with Marcus seemed relieved by the change, a testament to how chaotic things had become. By the end of the day, I'd moved back into my former office, a symbolic gesture that sent a clear message throughout the company. Merit and results still mattered at Apex. That evening, as I sat at my desk planning my first steps for the department's recovery, Victoria stopped by. I heard what happened, she said, leaning against the doorframe. That took courage. It took evidence, I replied, and some help from you, I suspect. Victoria smiled enigmatically. I simply mentioned to Eleanor that she might want to look more closely at our marketing metrics. The rest was all you. She paused. Richard won't forget this, you know. I know, I acknowledged. But I couldn't just walk away from everything we built here. Good, Victoria said. Because leaders don't walk away when things get difficult. They stand their ground and fight for what's right. She straightened up. Welcome back, Marketing Director Pearson. It's where you belong. As she left, I looked around my office, at the awards I'd earned, the campaign materials I'd developed, the photos of the team I'd built. This was indeed where I belonged, and I'd earned the right to be here. Richard had demoted me to promote his friend, but when the board called my name, everything changed. Sometimes, justice comes when you least expect it, but most deserve it. I had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. Now it was time to lead my team forward once again.